Congressional Democrats are pushing to make Washington, D.C. an official state. Now, on Monday, the House Democrat and the House Oversight and Reform Committee held a hearing on H.R. 51, otherwise known as the Washington, D.C. Admission Act, which would grant the nation's capital statehood. Legal scholar for the Heritage Foundation, Zack Smith, testified in front of the House Oversight Committee and made a case for why D.C. should not become a state.
Even if Congress could transform the district into a new state by simple legislation, we have to ask the question whether it should. And again, the answer is no. The framers of our Constitution wanted a separate federal district to preserve the safety and security of the federal government.
Yeah, to keep politics out of it, kind of. Joining us now to discuss, Zack Smith himself. Zack, first of all, maybe you could answer this question. I grew up outside Washington. I heard this all the time. Well, Washington, D.C. should be a state, and there are a lot of political reasons why it hasn't. But could you answer this question first? How does a state become a state? Is it just a matter of a majority vote?
So Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution, the admissions clause, is what governs new admissions for states. And so the Constitution contemplated that new states would come into the Union. And, you know, the Democratic members on the Oversight Committee said that we've used this process 37 previous times in our nation's history. Well, here's the problem with Washington, D.C. becoming a state through that same process. Washington, D.C. is unique and owes its existence to a separate constitutional provision, the District Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And so because the District of Columbia, a separate federal enclave to be our nation's capital, is explicitly contemplated in the Constitution, it only makes sense that a constitutional amendment would be needed to convert it into a new state, rather than simple legislation as this proposal, H.R. 51, proposes to do.
So, Zack, when you testified in front of the House Oversight Committee, you made these comments regarding the constitutionality of H.R. 51. Take a listen to this and then, explain a little further for us.
Now, advocates for H.R. 51 certainly recognize that the existence of the 23rd Amendment poses a constitutional problem for them. Unfortunately, H.R. 51 seeks to deal with this problem in a wholly inadequate and itself unconstitutional manner.
So why do you think they're even attempting to do this?
Well, it certainly does seem to be politically advantageous for the Democratic Party right now. That point was well made during the House Oversight Committee. But the 23rd Amendment really does pose a very significant constitutional problem to the district becoming a state through simple legislation. The 23rd Amendment gives the district and its residents 3 electors for president and vice president, allows them to participate in the presidential election process. And so if H.R. 51 becomes law and the district becomes a state, those 3 presidential electors would essentially be controlled by a handful of individuals, maybe even only the president and his family, because they would go to this very small new area that would be designated as the new national capital, which is essentially just the Capitol building, the National Mall, the White House, and a few other buildings. And so that's an absurd result. H.R. 51 encourages Congress to pass a constitutional amendment to repeal the 23rd Amendment as soon as possible. But that certainly needs to be something that's done prior to or simultaneously with any other constitutional amendment that would propose D.C. statehood.
All right. Zack, we're going to cut you just a little bit short, but wait right there. We may come back to you. I'm not sure. We're going to go to a live shot here with President Biden, who is discussing border security and immigration. Let's listen in.
Bipartisan agreement with Democrats and Republicans to provide over $700 million to the countries in the Northern Triangle to determine the best way to keep people from coming is keep them from wanting to leave. And the reason why so many people were leaving, we learned, was that not only gang violence and trafficking cartels, but natural disasters, hurricanes, floods, earthquakes. And so it's not like someone sits around a hand union table somewhere in Guatemala and says, I got a great idea, let's sell everything we have, give the money to a coyote, have them take our kids or us to the border of America, take us across, leave us in the desert, we don't speak the language. Won't that be fun? One of the ways we learned is that if you deal with the problems in country, it benefits everyone. It benefits us, it benefits the people, it grows the economies there. Unfortunately, the last administration eliminated that funding, did not engage in it, did not use it, even though there was over $700 million to help get this done. We're reinstituting that program. And there are, as I said, there are many factors as to why people leave in the first place. But this is the source of one of the reasons why we've had such a, before we took office, in the midst of the last administration's somewhat draconian policies of separating children from their parents, etc. What happened was that we found that there were serious spike in the number of people heading to the southern border.
All right, President Biden talking about something significant at Vice President Harris. There's always criticism Vice Presidents don't do anything. She's being put in charge of the border efforts, which has become a crisis to everybody but the administration. Maybe they're recognizing it is. And then the administration announcing some plans to try to put some money into some of these countries that need the help, and also implement perhaps the same kind of policy that President Trump had, and that remain in Mexico, remain where you are before trying to come up to the border and get into the United States. So we'll continue to follow that. Zack Smith, we did want to bring you in just for another question to wrap up. You testified about Washington, D.C. becoming the 51st state. You say it's unconstitutional. What about Puerto Rico? What if they were to say by legislation they would like to be part of the country and they have enough votes to get it through Congress?
If Puerto Rico wanted to become a state, that would be governed by the Article 4, Section 3 admission process. And again, I think it's important to emphasize the district, as our nation's capital, is unique and owes its existence to an independent provision of the Constitution, something that no other state that's ever been admitted to the Union has had to grapple with. And so the district is unique, and a constitutional amendment would be needed in order for it to become our nation's 51st state.